Comey has pled not guilty and is asking for a jury trial. And to remind our viewers, there are no cameras in court. These are federal proceedings. What do you make of that new information?
I think we could all have been quite certain that Jim Comey was going to plead not guilty, simply because that's he's asserted his innocence. He made a direct-to-camera video that he put on the internet the night the charges came down, saying that he intended to contest his innocence along the way. Now, to be clear, a few of the things that we've talked about here are rights that all defendants in the United States possess, like number one, the right to plead not guilty and the right to a jury trial. That's right out of what's called the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution in the United States, and Americans know that quite well. So a lot of what we will see today are just very ministerial, almost, rights. Advising him of the charges against him, telling him what his rights are, and laying out what the next few months will look like as he proceeds through this proceeding.
Right, okay, thank you. Stephen, this is a moment in time, of course. Trump criminally prosecuting his political enemy, and he is firmly standing his ground. Have a listen to this exchange with CNN's Caitlin Collins on Monday.
Are you worried that your own statements calling for his prosecution could help him actually in his defense of this case?
No, I think he's a crooked guy. He's a dirty cop. I'm allowed to do that if I wanted to do that.
Talk to us about the gravity of this moment, Stephen.
Well, I think Elliot put his finger on it there when he said that this is a key moment, because this is a president of the United States singling out a political opponent for prosecution. Trump came out and called for this indictment, and then 3 days later, lo and behold, Comey was indicted. So he is a very influential and historic figure in the United States. After all, this is the former head of the FBI being indicted and showing up to court to plead not guilty to a crime. So that in itself is extraordinary. And then there's this feeling about, well, the president is weaponizing his power to target his political opponents, which is not something we've seen generally in the United States, but is the tool often of authoritarian leaders abroad. I think this case actually helps us trace the arc of Trumpism itself. It was it was right at the beginning of the Trump first term that Trump, according to Comey, asked for his loyalty as the head of the FBI. That is the start of the erosion of the standards in the Justice Department that we saw on display yesterday in Washington, when Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, put on an extraordinary performance of defiance and contempt in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So this is not just about one case. I think it's about the destruction of standards that we've come to expect from justice in the United States.
Yeah, fascinating. Elliot, Comey says he is intent on fighting this case in court and is confident that he will win. How strong is his case, as you understand it?
It's less a question of how strong his case is and the number of issues that come with the government's case. And just to back up for international viewers, in American law, the defendant, the person who's charged with the crime, does not actually have to prove anything. It is entirely 100% on the government to establish the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's the language. Now, the big challenge for the prosecution here legally is that they have to establish not just that Jim Comey made a false statement to Congress, but that he knew it was a false statement at the time he made it and still went ahead and made it anyway. That's far harder than it might sound, because you have to get inside a defendant's head. And did he write down that he knew he was lying? Did he tell someone that he knew he was lying? Or was he merely confused? Or was there merely a difference of opinion? And if there's confusion or just a difference of opinion with another witness, that is simply not grounds to convict someone of making a false statement. And so there's really the big challenger. So that's the legal question. And then there's the far broader, let's call it political question. There are reasons that Jim Comey can seek to have this indictment thrown out, starting with the fact that, as Stephen had noted, the president has made a series of on-the-record statements about targeting Jim Comey for prosecution, texting a message to the Attorney General of the United States directing, or at least asking, or at least hinting strongly at prosecuted. Comey can now go into court and say that the charges against him are illegitimate because of the fact that the President of the United States has in effect put his thumb on the scale toward getting Jim Comey prosecuted. So there are a few different avenues. Some of them are procedure, but some of them just are on the law and how hard it is to prove these cases that might make this a case where it's not out of the question that Comey walks away here.
I'm just hearing that the request has been for a trial in January. Is that quicker than you would expect? Slower than you would expect? What do you make of the timing?
No, it's
request?
not. So back to the United States Constitution. The explicit language in the Constitution, back to the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution, is that everyone in the United States, regardless, is entitled to a speedy trial. Now, in the United States, that tends to be 70 to 90 to 100 days. It varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. This court, where Comey is charged, it's in Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C., a few miles from where I'm seated right now. They tend to put things to trial around 70 or 80 days. And so it really doesn't shock me that, trial 2-3 months out would be unreasonable. Now, again, sometimes those dates get moved depending on what happens in the trial, but that's not a remarkable fact.
Yeah, good to have you. Stephen, look, I mean, we have been discussing for some time when you've been on this show, the sort of wider story of Donald Trump using the law to go after his perceived opponents. To that end, he has just posted on Truth Social, quote, "Chicago mayor should be in jail for failing to protect ICE officers." Governor Pritzker, also, that of course is the Illinois governor. How concerning do you find that post?
Well, it's concerning in that you have again a president calling for the jailing of his political opponents. Obviously, a lot of this is being done for political effect. There's no legal proceeding against either people named in this post. It doesn't seem like there's any reason for one either. But the administration has said that it will use all of its powers to go against political opponents who do stand in the way of its deportation drive. We've seen judges and officials, local officials, arrested at some of these customs enforcement facilities. So it is part of a troubling pattern. And let it be said that there are troops from elsewhere in the United States and National Guard troops from Illinois massing even as we speak, as the president attempts to send troops into Chicago to what he says is to protect customs and enforcement officers. The president himself has been speaking about invoking the Insurrection Act, which would be an extreme measure to use forces in law enforcement, which is normally not allowed under the law. So these are very authoritarian echoes, and it's clearly a political attempt by the administration to put teeth behind its deportation drive. I think, as always with Trump, you have to make a distinction between what actually happens and his rhetoric. In the Comey case, why it's so different, as we were saying, is because his rhetoric was followed through. So I think that the moment to get alarmed in Chicago is if the president emergency presidential powers that are not merited by the situation on the ground.
To both of you, thank you. And let me just wrap up what we know at this